Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. There it is. I hit record, and it's magic. We get to do this thing. We get to have a fun conversation. I am so excited to introduce you to who I get to talk to today. The introduction goes beyond a page on Google Doc, so I had to summarize it somehow and refine it. Speaker, author, his book, Start Ugly. And we're going to talk about that first off the bat, because I think a lot of us need to start, and we're struggling. So creator of the Podfest, trainer, business leader, motivator, filmmaker, producer. He is in the Library of Congress. All these things are afoot today. Chief Creative Officer of Podfest Multimedia Expo, Krimitsos. Welcome to the show, sir.
Casey, thanks for having me.
Man, there's so many things you're doing. You're a busy guy.
I try and keep busy, otherwise I get in trouble.
No, I'm with you on that one. So this show today, I mean, we've got you. Your book is so popular. Everyone I'm talking to is talking about it. EO circles, marketing circles. So it's an honor. And there's so many things going on. So we're going to talk about getting started. We're going to talk about your conference and how you make it intimate and have that cool feel, and how we could potentially do that virtually. So let me do this. Let me pass you this thing. It's heavy, though. 1 second. Ugh. Okay, here you go. You got it?
I got
Thor's
it.
hammer. One hand. You backhanded that thing. Oh, wow. Jeez. So take Thor's hammer, smash for me some kind of myth, bogus strategy, misconception that drives you crazy. Set the record straight once and for all.
In business, everybody's waiting for a perfect start. There's no such thing. So therefore I say start ugly and perfectly execute after you start. So don't wait on perfection. It doesn't exist. And then the other myth is it's not social distancing. It's physical distancing.
Oh, okay. Okay. You're just going to smash 9 things. Okay. It's like the movie. You're literally taking the hammer and you're smashing all the G.I. Joe bad guys, and you're smashing over here in every wave of your. Okay. Let's start at the beginning. No such thing as perfection. And I know you built a whole book on this thing. Was it driving you crazy? Was this something you were struggling with? Why go through the trouble? Because I did a book. It's a pain in the ass. Why did you go through the trouble? What's the deal with this?
I was looking to create a book about future technologies, and it was going to be called Future Proof Your Business. But we realized the moment I had a co-author, the moment we wrote about future technologies, the book would be outdated the moment we published.
So true.
So then I was like, okay, I don't really have any ideas of how to teach people that they need to innovate at the speed of thought, because I think it's really important. And a friend of mine had this little allegory story about someone that basically was the best lumberjack, and he had all these lumberjacks and they had the sharpest axes, but no matter how good he was replaced by the guy that created the chainsaw.
Right.
So I took that, I expanded into a full-on story, fictional account for people to understand there's no such. So you have two different kinds of people.
Okay.
You have people that just fail to start. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And they just need a kick in the ass. But then you have successful business owners that plateau and are prisoners of their own success. And they actually need to start ugly as well. And what's happened to them is they've tasted a bit of success, and now they don't want to move outside of that comfort window. And that's a normal human behavior that happens to everybody.
Yeah. I mean, right. It happens to everyone. I mean, for sure, business owners, you create something. I felt that you create something, you're like, oh, it's kind of comfy. But then it's like, ooh, do I want to get cold leaving the cave again to go get another woolly mammoth and drag that back into the cave? That sounds scary, but we can all relate to that. It's like fear, maybe. I don't know.
At the end of the day, I had a lot of friends talk about this, but if you're success achievement orientated, you call the fear perfectionism usually. If you're someone that just is afraid of the unknown, you just say, I don't know what's out there. So your fear of it's all, at the end of the day, it's the same emotion, fear, but achievement orientated people talk about it's just not perfect yet. So they have different things. And then people that haven't gotten anything started usually procrastinate. So they just delay the inevitable, but the core emotion is fear, period.
Pretty sure I've done both of those probably within the same day. But the achievement oriented people, which sometimes I feel like I am, perfection, right? I'm like that with writing blog posts, right? Or writing in general, which is why a book was hard and I had to like speak it, is because I know I can write a really good sentence. I like writing, but like, and then you got to make sure everything is so good. And then what if no one reads it? And I'll grind to a halt with the writing, wanting to get it perfect.
It's tough. You just gotta, most people don't know the best way. A friend of mine says, learn the way you learn. So a lot of people don't even know how they learn. So I'm a visual learner. Sounds like you are too. So a visual learner tends to do better speaking things out because you're visualizing in your brain what you're talking out. So you got to learn the way you learn best. And if you know that modality, you have a leg up on how to create. And a lot of people get confused on kind of what the best thing. For me, I'm visual. So I talk things out and I'm able to talk out what I see in my head. Not the best writer, but if I could visualize something, I could definitely write it down.
How did you figure that out? And like, is there just two different things, or visual versus like reading it, or what?
Like my wife is a writer. She enjoys writing. So writers naturally are people that journal all the time. So if someone's like, oh, I've had a journal since I was in high school, that person is a writer. They love writing thoughts down. Someone like me be like, journal every day, since that just doesn't even exist in my world. Sounds like a great idea. Sounds like something I need to do.
Yeah.
But that's just not the way I process. I process visually and then I talk it out. So I just learned as a young kid, I used to go for walks and it looked like I was insane because I would talk out loud to myself while I'm walking and I would visualize. So I just knew early on that's how I process information. So that's how I wrote the book. I visualized all the characters. I visualized what they would say, what they would do. And then it took me 2 hours to write the actual book. But the visual took a process of weeks.
I was going to say 2 hours. Damn.
Well, I had 20 drafts, like 20, 25 drafts.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of like that Sylvester Stallone story when he wrote Rocky. Yes, he wrote it in a day, but then it took like 50 drafts to get it to where it is.
Yeah, and then like no one would take it. Yeah, no one
would take it, and he insisted he had to be the lead. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty epic. Right. He had to make sure he was playing Rocky. And I'm glad he did.
We all are, yeah.
Right? I was thinking the same thing. So, okay. So figuring out, I mean, you're just full of these nuggets, right? So figuring out the way you learn is critical. By the way, I have a journal. I'm even looking at it. I write in it periodically. I'm good at starting it. I start a lot of journals. Like the best self journal, all those things. I've started those, but not so regular. So in figuring out what's your way of learning, and then once you know how you learn, you just seek that out.
I could give you like an example so we could like understand how that plays out. So my wife is a writer. She loves writing. Right. She does a meditation podcast, but the core of that podcast is her spending hours writing down what she's about to put down on mic. Because she's such a strong writer, it lends well to that gift of creating those guided meditations that she creates. For me, I'm an orator. I like telling stories, so I'm better maybe on video or through audio podcasts. I could still write. Doesn't mean, but it's not my strong suit. So when you know your strong suit, it helps you kind of. I know now instead of sitting there, maybe I'll walk around for a couple miles and visualize what I need, and then I could write it down. It'll help me get it down quicker.
I totally get that. Because, and I mentioned earlier, when it came to actually writing my book, I was probably at a standstill until eventually I worked with a group where I was just talking the book out and just presenting it and having fun, full energy. I had to plan it in advance, but it was planning notes to be able to talk to the story and tell the story as opposed to writing it down perfectly type thing.
Famous case study, Gary Vaynerchuk's never written a book, even though it's all his words, his thoughts. He has writers that take what he thinks and what he says, and they put the book down, but it's authentically him. He's not the guy that's going to sit there and write a book. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Can you imagine him being
he can't. His audiobooks are great because he just riffs off and there's all this extra bonus content. That's his medium so everybody and he knows he's not a writer, but he's someone that creates tons. He just needs someone to capture his essence in the written form. So learn the way you learn. If you learn the way you learn, you have a leg up in life. And I think if anyone's a parent, tell your kids. I credit my friend Jun Han with this. He told his kids, learn the way you learn. If you know how you learn, you'll have a leg up in life.
Huh. With Gary V, I've caught some of his, it's kind of funny. I've caught some of his presentations where he has a bunch of people pitching him something and he gives them advice. I swear one of the ones recently though, he's given them advice and they're like, they're trying to defend themselves from it. And then everyone's like, what are you doing? Gary Vee is telling you what you should probably look at. And they're like, no, it's not that way, Gary. You don't understand our pitch.
Ego is something.
Seriously. So, okay, let's go back to the, so we got to learn the way we learn. And we're going back to, it's interesting. You brought up how the fear, depending on which mode you're in, it's either your success mode and it's perfection, or if you were just procrastinating, or it's that fear of the unknown. What was the other one?
Yeah, it's basically procrastination. The people that, let's say, when I say achievement oriented, people that consider themselves achievement oriented, they tend to say, they use perfection as the excuse. People that have not achieved it yet, procrastination, or I'm not ready yet. But at the end of the day, you hit the nail on the head. It's fear nonetheless. It's just the ego has to label it differently to help the person kind of give themselves the excuse of why they're not doing what they're doing.
I feel like I'm talking to like a Buddhist monk. You have all these like different. I
do a lot of thinking.
It's either that or you're the guy actually writing the fortune cookies. Like I finally met you after all these years. It's like you.
I come up with the lucky numbers as well.
Right. Oh, the numbers too. I can't imagine how you come up with those things. Okay. So the whole concept was then you were trying to get people. The book just came out, and then you started writing about lumberjacks. Is that just what happened? You just started kind of like what the book is talking about? You just got
going? I said, we're about to toss this beautiful book, and we had this little 2-page story, and I'm like, I think I could write a book and flesh out the characters. And basically in EO, I meet a lot of people. And one of the things that kind of spurred the book is I was sharing with the group how I was looking to fly private jet travel. It's one of my goals, where you could lease these fractional jets. And I basically said, hey, I figured the prices are coming down. My income's going up. I'll meet it somewhere in the middle. And I remember the individuals in the group, very successful people. They're like, oh, that'll be the day, the private jet. And it was one of those thoughts. I'm sitting there and I'm like, here's these really successful people, and they're even limiting their success. So like achievement-oriented people, just because they have some semblance of success, they're capped because they're kind of happy where they're at. And that's the Start Ugly philosophy, is like, hey man, keep re-engineering, keep starting ugly, but it doesn't have to be business. It could be anything. Yeah. I have a case study of my brother-in-law. We were talking, and he's like, yeah, I want to pick up a hobby. I want to brew beer. And I'm like, and I basically gave him a story of how people waste more time than actually doing the thing. And he kind of said to me, I go, what's the huh? He goes, I've been thinking about brewing beer for 8 years. So I said to him, and he's in his 30s. I said to him, how much does it cost to brew beer? He goes, oh, the setup's like $100-something. I go, I'll buy it for your birthday. Like, he goes, no, I got money. So he just wasted all this time thinking about something where he could have done it. Now I'm happy to report he's brewing beer now.
Nice.
Doesn't taste good, but he's still doing it. So now, but guess what? He started ugly. Now he'll perfect. Yeah. 8 years he waited. 8 freaking years. So then I started thinking about things I wanted to do, and I'm judging him about 8 years. And I was thinking about stuff for 3-4 years. I'm like, how many of us think about things and we never do it? I'd rather you do something not like what you're doing than spending and investing time thinking about it. You'll wind up having a much fulfilled life because you figure out what you don't like and what you do like. And that's most people don't even know what they like or they don't like. Think about that. They go through life. I see so many business owners, they wind up in some business and they get stuck there and they're like, yeah, I guess what I have to do for the next 20 years. Why? Or I have friends, all they do is accumulate wealth. Why? After a while, like, what's the point? And I'm the entrepreneur that likes the Elon Musk type guy. Like, hey, let's do the moonshot. Let's go to the Mars.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Well, a lot of people think, oh, he's crazy or he's thinking crazy.
It's awesome. Awesome crazy.
That's the person that speaks to my soul. The guy that's like, okay, I have a small amount of time on this earth. How can I, this Steve Jobs, how can I throw a dent into it and see what we can do? And that's kind of my vantage point.
When he, just recently, I mean, this is just recent where, they did the Crew Dragon where they had the people. Did you watch that? Did you see that happen?
I watched it on YouTube. I didn't watch it live. You remember they were going to launch it. I was watching live and then it got delayed.
Saturday.
On Saturday, I saw it after I was watching. I saw him get choked up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we saw the launch and I mean, you got your fingers crossed and you're just like, oh God, just be a normal rocket launch. And then, but yeah, I mean, Falcon, they've launched so many of them by that point. It was a normal rocket launch. And then they get to the space station and you're just waiting and they float through. One of the guys bumps his head, but like it was awesome. And I remember thinking like, he's really going for it. Like he's really doing something. Of course he has PayPal money, but like really, to your point, leaving a dent. And like, I respect that. It makes you think about your own stuff where you're like, where are my dents? What are the different impacts I'm going to make? And how can I really make a difference on things that matter?
Yeah, and I think all of us, I hope most of us feel like we're making a difference. I was just telling a group of friends of mine, with the shutdown and the pandemic, little did we know how important the person that cuts our hair is.
Oh my gosh,
so
dude.
like that
I need a
person
haircut
hasn't,
so bad.
so do I. Haven't gotten one, but that person is really important because they create value in people's self-esteem. So a job, many people be like, oh, what a low paying job, or what is that, is a huge important factor for people's self-care and self-being. So everything has value and everything's important. I would just tell the people that get stuck somewhere and they don't question what they want, and they might be rudderless, you really have to intentionally think what you want in life and how to create it, because before you know it, it's over.
I mean, this is so true, right? I mean, so many people are out there working. You know, we have a lot of marketers listening to this show, right? You're in some job working for a company. Maybe you hate the customer or the client or the product. You're like, this product's stupid. Well, leave. Do something that you enjoy. Go find that passion. How do you though? Like, how do you? I mean, it's easier said than done, Casey. How do you go like find what you want or figure out what's the dialogue like to figure out what you do want?
So in my late 20s, I was pursuing wealth. So I want to make millions. So I would pursue money. And I had hit, $1 million revenue, not necessarily income, but I wasn't fulfilled. So I had some real estate. I sold what I had. The market meltdown happened. So I was in this really unique position where I had money and time.
Wow.
And I spent 6 months asking myself what you just said. I asked myself, what do you want to accomplish with your life? You have a very small amount of time, and what would make you happy? So I call that period of my life standing in the silence. I stood in the silence of my own questions. And for 6 months, I'd go for walks by myself, asking myself, what do you want out of your life? How do you want to lead it? So I came up with something that pretty much everybody comes up with, which is I want to help other people. It seems to be a very common theme. Then the question was, okay, what avenues and what skill sets do I have that I could utilize that? And I realized I had this really strong suit for connecting people and being a matchmaker, whether it's business or even personal. I connect my best friend with his spouse right now. So I've connected a lot of couples. So that was one of my key core strengths. And then the other thing is I love business. So I was like, okay, I'm really good at business. I understand it. I could connect people through that avenue, and I created a community. So Casey, this was the crazy part about this. I'm 29. I was producing 2 local TV shows. I really enjoyed doing local TV shows here in Tampa. One was about business called Millionaire Mindset. The other one was Bleep and Truth, which was a political debate show. Both of them were a lot of fun.
Wow.
But I said to myself, okay, the political stuff, you're never going to win. Everybody hates each other, polar opposites. I enjoyed the debate, though. You learn a lot from how people think and why they're. But I was like, you know what? I got migraines when I'm done with that show, even though it's very popular. People love it. I said the Millionaire Mindset, I'd get a lot of thank yous from people because it was improving their looking at how business or what they could do with their life. So I said, okay, I'm going to send an email out to my audience. I had 300 opt-ins at the time. And I'm going to see if I could create this. So I visualized 100 people in a room staring back at me, and I'm up on stage. 3 months later, I was in a hotel room with 100 people staring back at me at stage, and I froze because I had realized I had just visualized this at sunset. And 3 months later, it's standing, 6 months, I was doing the thinking and processing. At the end of that 6 months, 3 months later, I had a living, breathing group. And then a few months later, I featured this young kid that I really admired because he was doing a lot of cool things on YouTube. It was 08, I think, 08, 09. His name was Gary Vaynerchuk, and he was talking about wine.
No kidding, right?
Yes. And then I featured all these people that most people don't even they kind of know now, but they were huge. Gary Vee was coming up, and I was like, I like this guy. He's going to be huge. And all these internet marketers came through my crew. We used to do a marketing cruise for 5 straight years. So I wound up meeting all these amazing people.
Marketing cruise? Hell yeah.
It was a lot of fun. So it was not a lot of money, but it was a lot of fun.
Right.
It was so it was an amazing thing. So you have to ask intentionally yourself, what do you want out of your life? So I have friends right now that have tons of money and they're accumulating tons of things, but what's the point? So I for whatever reason at the end, so I always understood the millennial mindset of experience over this. I kind of understood it. It's, what do you want out of life? If you don't if you don't get what you think you want out of life, then what kind of life did you lead? Do I want to be an accumulator of possessions? I don't wear watches. I don't like, not that it's just, I don't need anything for material. I want to have experiences with my friends and family and improve other people's lives. So that's kind of how I live my life. And that's why I promote events and I have communities that I build. And those are very hard to do, but they're very rewarding.
Right. Right. Man, what's the point, right? The experience matters, and just kind of just hustling and going through that. I can picture you as you're describing it. You're like visualizing something, and it's almost like a movie where you're fast forward. You're like, shit, I'm actually in front of them right now. Like time goes by quick too. Suddenly now you're in the room in front of the 100 people. You're like, damn, I was just like a moment ago thinking that this would be cool. And did you unfreeze at some point? No, I'm like in the presentation. Did you eventually start talking?
I did, and I never did that again. And it was one of those surreal moments. They asked Billy Joel once. I think Howard Stern asked him, "Did you ever think to yourself, like, I'm Billy Joel, I'm in front of 100,000 people?" He said he did, and it made for a crappy show because you really have to do that on the side, not on during the performance, right? Not during when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. Everyone's like, man, he sucked tonight. That's because he's having this existential.
I had some friends tell me it was really humble that you did that, but don't do that again.
Oh, because you told everyone what you were doing?
No, I mean, I literally froze. Imagine someone freezing for like 30 seconds, staring back at a crowd. and I wasn't nervous. I was just like thinking to myself, like, holy crap, look at this. You just don't do that. It's very awkward for the crowd.
It's awkward for people. Yeah. If I was there, I'd be like, okay, everybody, raffle tickets on sale. Let's do this. Okay, now back to you, Chris. Chris?
The other thing I used to do, I had no awareness of being a leader in front of the room. And my friend used to do the audio visual part. His name is Anthony. So I used to yell at him in front of the crowd, "Anthony, you son of a bitch." We were friends, but it's like they were, you got to listen to the feedback. This is me starting ugly. They were like, "Hey, Chris, if you have anything to say to Anthony, wait till we're all out of the room, then talk to him."
Right. You're like publicly shaming the AV guy.
Well, he and I are friends, so it was a different kind of conversation.
Different kind of thing.
They don't, if you don't know us, you don't know that.
Yeah. If you don't know, they're like, wow, that guy's such a dick to his team, man. Like this, he's so mean. Like he's not mean. That's his friend. They're going to yell at each other later on. This will be fun. Tell me about this event, because it's Podfest, right? I mean, this was your brainchild. Was this the 100 people was the brainchild, or is it since developed?
That event developed. That community was a local community with 300 business owners. I sold it, and then during growing that community, I basically created a community for podcasting. Nice. And I helped business owners learn about podcasting. And we created a Podfest about 7 years ago. There's 100 people in the room. It was the only event, and this is something to know as a marketer, that sponsors would contact me and ask me to sponsor. And I didn't have to negotiate. Like, they were like, yeah, how much is it? Great. So I learned I was onto something, because there's sponsor dollars for this. And I have people and eyeballs. So that event went from 100 to 181. And then we were in Tampa, Florida. And the third year I was supposed to put in St. Pete, Florida. And as people were leaving, the people that flew in, they go, "Where's St. Pete again? Is that around here?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a problem."
Yeah.
So a friend of mine said, "Hey,
it's like across the river, right? It's like right there."
Yeah, it's literally 30 minutes across the river, right? So I go, if they don't know where it is, that's a big problem. They're not going to want to go to a city they don't know.
They don't know.
So I said to a friend of mine, I go, "What do you think?" He goes, "You got to take it to Orlando." And his sister ran a resort there. She was the service manager. And I said to him, his name is Neil. I said, "Neil, I can't afford like $1 million commitment." For people that don't know, and I know this is a lot of people on this are business people, but most people go to an event, they have no clue the expenses. It's overwhelming, the amount of expenses that you have to negotiate. You have to pay for everything. I mean, everything. So
like what? Like power, water?
Yeah, actually, if you want someone to do what's called a power drop to plug in, it's $750 per power drop. So you have to negotiate that you're going to have extension cords plugged in for your registration team. Otherwise, they could charge you up to $750 per thing getting plugged in. So, I mean, like minutia that you don't even know exists unless you negotiate it off.
If you forget that and you ask for it later, like, "Oh yeah, no problem, we'll send you the invoice for $750.
this past year we put floor stickers like on the floor. Hey, the event's this way.
Yeah.
They came up to me very nice and they go, hey, that's $500. I go, for what? They go, for the floor stickers. I'm like, just to put them on the floor. They're like, yeah. I was like, I didn't realize there was a charge for that. So I was like, all right, whatever.
I don't know. It's a little bit of a racket, man. Whatever, but like
it's part of the business. So I said to him, listen, man, I don't have $250,000 guarantee, whatever it was at the time. He goes, talk to my sister. And he was part of my business group in Tampa.
Yeah.
So I go over there and his sister hooked me up with the sales lady. Long story short, they gave me the entire resort for $3,500 food and beverage, which is unheard of. I went back scratching my head because the only time I felt bad for a hotel in the negotiation, I've never felt bad for a hotel since. And I called up my buddy. I said, dude, what the hell did your sister tell the sales lady? She basically was negotiating with herself. She kept lowering the price every time I was thinking. He goes, my sister told her, if you don't make that kid happy, and if I hear a complaint, I will never service any of your events that you sell into this hotel. And his sister was there for like 15 years. I said, why would she do that? He goes, well, when I moved from Orlando to Tampa, you're the one that helped me start my business to feed my family. And my sister believes that we owe you one. And this is us. And they're very proud Venezuelan family. This is us paying you back and helping you get started. And that got me into the convention center type of business, which is a very big, very awesome events. And I got to learn without having to lose my shirt by having people that supported me, telling me what to negotiate up front. Now the event, close to 2,000 people. We have a full trade show. We have another event called VidFest for YouTubers. So we're business owners and creatives and independents come to learn kind of not only how to podcast, but how to plug into other podcasters, create joint ventures, alliances, and then talk to global brands. I describe myself as an airport. I'm a hub, and I allow brands and people to interact in that hub, and that's what I do for a living.
You're an airport. You're podcast airport.
Basically.
But like 2,000 people, I know we were talking earlier, there's a sense that a lot of people don't even realize it's 2,000 people. They're thinking it's just OG 100 again. They think it's just a small event. How do you is this intentional? You create this like intimacy or some,
so
how do you make those big events feel local?
Yeah. So one of the myths early on was people were like, Chris, we don't want this to grow. And I'm thinking, well, it has to grow for me to make a living.
Yeah.
But I understand their point was like, Chris, we're so intimate. We know everybody. We like the feel of this. We don't want to lose that. And basically we had to break that myth and we had to say, wait a minute, let's create an event where we strategically connect people, create collisions for people to meet. So the more people we have, the smaller it feels. And it took a lot of work. We had to institute what I call the strategic alliance. Right now, I think we call it the podcaster meet and greet. We created all these little resources and tools and micro groups and micro cons for people to connect. So then by the time you're done with our 3-day event, you probably will have met 50 to 60 people, have created 1 to 2 quality connections, and then have a group of people you could build on each and every year throughout the conference. So the biggest problem I have is people will talk about a conference in the hominess of it. And people are like, yeah, I heard it was really good. It's very intimate. How many people do you have? 100, 200? And we haven't had that since we began, really.
Right.
But that's a compliment. And it's also something I have to market against to make sure people realize like, no, it's a lot bigger than a small intimate conference. It's a huge conference. It just has a small intimate feel by design and by intention.
Right. I love the terminology. You create collisions. People colliding, and also the 1 to 2 quality connections. The people that know realize that, hell yeah, that's all I need. I don't need to collect 900 business cards, a business card from everyone who's attending. No, there's a certain, quality over quantity kind of thing in those kind of events.
Absolutely. And what we've done is something that I could execute across other platforms. So we're creating VidFest. We've created it, but we're growing into that. And we have a lot of other micro brands. So our unique value proposition is creating an intimate community environment in the convention space. So we could literally take that and rinse and repeat with multiple brands and verticals and categories. We happen to be in the space of what I would call new media, but right now I don't think anyone considers podcasts or YouTube new media anymore. It's media. It's the media.
I tell you what, there's probably some people in Fortune 1000 companies that are thinking it's all
not.
new.
Yeah, I hope not. That's to their detriment.
But anyways,
if they are, I remember our local newspaper, someone was telling me that they were saying internally, the CEO or COO was like, YouTube videos, who's going to watch those? And that was only like a few years back. And they went bankrupt. They had to go get funded and bailed out for obvious reasons. But it just, you know, you want to understand that this is the new way of communicating.
Right. Right.
Joe Rogan just got that $100 million deal.
Right.
So I think if someone says there's no money in it, you point to that, obviously for the 1%, but it's going to trickle down to everybody.
But yeah, if people haven't heard, because tell people about the Joe Rogan deal with Spotify.
So Spotify basically paid for Joe Rogan's content to be parked on their player. There is no paywall, but it's basically it's a garden, and to get anything that Joe produces, you got to go inside the Spotify garden. He still, from what I understand, keeps JRE Clips, which is his YouTube clip show. So he still has an outlet there. And the deal is worth a lot more than the 100 million. I don't know if it's yearly or multiple. From what I've heard from internal sources, it's much more than $100 million. So Joe took some money off the table, cashed in. For people that are not familiar, his show gets, I believe it was 190 million downloads a month across platforms. It's an insane amount of downloads. Spotify stock went up by $5 billion within the 48-hour period, which tells you they got them at a discount. So it was a huge value add, and I think it woke up the markets of like, okay, this is a real play. Spotify is getting into streaming video. We're going to see Amazon get in. So there's no better time to be a content creator, because all these platforms are now going to compete for these content creators, and the value is going to increase in many different ways.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things that could happen with that, and I'm surprised they haven't gobbled you up yet.
Well,
Spotify coming knocking? Maybe they should.
No, an event like mine, I've done a lot of research since getting into this. I love what I do because I'm intentional, right?
Yeah.
But my local community, what really wasn't worth much, because it was a local, almost like a local EO chapter, but we had 300 members. So that community is worth someone that maybe it's an ego play. They want to stand out as a leader. There's a lot of work, as you know, with these things.
Yeah.
What I do here, this is a media play. So a CBS, a Viacom, we have VidCom, I believe, out of Anaheim. No one knows how much they got bought up, but the guesstimates are 9 figures plus. They're worth multiples because, again, it's a garden that's walled. Very few people could create what we've created. For me, Casey, I've thought about this. I'm not selling anytime soon because I love what I do. When I sold my last company, I went into a funk for a year. So I don't have anything better to do. This is what I was meant to do. So I'm going to ride it till I get bored. Now, if I get bored, I know that it's sellable. That's a good thing to know. But right now, why? Like, I've had to ask myself, what's the benefit?
They can sponsor it. They just can't have it.
Yeah, I don't care about the money. So if you don't care about the money, then why would you? I'm happy.
It's a good point, especially if it's not your primary motivator, like you're saying. You shifted that model in your mind. Yeah, the Spotify thing is it's interesting. Just the idea. We're on a podcast. It's kind of super meta to talk about podcasts on a podcast. I'm sure there's shows dedicated to it. But what's your take on it for brands? We have a lot of B2B marketers listening to. I mean, obviously there's a lot more podcasts than there were in the old days, but it's not all Joe Rogan stuff. Like what?
No, B2B does really well. B2B does really well. Remember, I've been traveling now for the last 7 years, teaching this stuff and seeing case studies. And the B2B people, first off, if you get someone that's like, I don't get it, where's the value here? That's just someone that hasn't educated themselves on the marketplace and how people communicate. B2B is like, this is I've met a guy that did an oil and drilling network for oil and drilling gas. And they basically, what's happened is, Barstool Sports is a great case study. All of these big companies start as like, usually if it's early 04 or 05, they start as newspapers, then websites, and then they siphoned into podcasts. So here's the value. If a B2B wants to advertise on a blog, they can, right? But there's multiple blogs competing, and there's an infinite amount of pages that they create. So it's not like a newspaper where, there's only 32 pages of real estate.
Right.
It's endless.
Right.
But if a Casey has an audience in a specific niche, and that audience listens to that voice, there's a lot of value there. And there's we helped a guy, Kevin Jans, a great friend of mine. He started the Government Contracting Officer podcast. Doesn't get more niche than that. He gets 500-600 downloads. He's probably way over that now. But even back then, he was getting, 6-figure sponsors a year because he's dealing with people that are dealing with multi-million RFPs, helping people win those contracts. Yeah. He no longer takes ad revenue because he makes more money getting all the incoming as a consultant into his business. So he's built an entire thing off of his podcast. Now he was about to quit 6 months in because he set a 6-month timeline, but he's like, I enjoy it, so I'm going to keep doing it. And then all of a sudden, somewhere around month 7 or 8, everything started to break open for him.
Huh. So yeah, even the super bizarre niche type thing, I can relate, right? I love conversations and learning from people. So if there's to your point, if there's cash or there's a business tie-in, awesome, bonus. But there's more to it.
But it's so let's think about this. And anyone listening, this is really important. Podcasting is on-demand, searchable, episodic audio. So it's not an interview format. Okay. Interview is a format that exists within podcasting. You also have the Q&A format. So I have companies that will do a strategy day and we'll create a Q&A format where it's 7 of the most commonly asked questions that they get asked. And we put it on demand in podcasting, and it's searchable audio. So now leads come through that one and done thing. You could do seasonal podcasts. There's so many robust ways that you could use podcasting. You could use it as a person trying to get the attention of the largest CEOs in your thing and use it, as you just said, relationship building and not care about the audience to open up doors and relationships for you and your niche. So there's just, we have, there was a gentleman that wanted to do a leadership podcast. And to me, like I've heard this 100 times, I want to do a leadership podcast. Like, okay, what makes you a leader compared to a Gary Vee or a Tim Ferriss? However, we told him, listen, man, stick with what you know and go niche. And one day he took me out for bagels and out of the blue. And his name is
that
Bill.
A thing? You gotta go for bagels?
Well, I guess he figures New York, and he took me to Einstein, which was very nice, but it's nowhere near New York bagel. But anyways, I went to Einstein Bagels. It was early in the morning. I could meet him before I head to the office. He goes, you know why I'm taking you out? I go, I have no clue. He goes, you told me stay niche. He was a CEO in the healthcare industry, and he's high up there. So he created the Rural Health Podcast. He wound up becoming the top leader in rural healthcare. Do you know how many rural hospitals are in the U.S.? And then he became huge in Australia because most of their hospitals are rural outside of Sydney and Melbourne. And then he was offered a 7-figure deal to be in charge of a NGO to represent all rural healthcare fields. So these are the things. These are the things that you could look at. It's very robust. Those niches are wide open, and the opportunity is there right now. 7 years ago, the opportunity was like, my wife started Biz Women Rock. Like she was one of the first 3 podcasts for business women by business women, which at the time you're like, there's no way this is available. There was nothing there. Now, now there's hundreds,
So and it's like fresh, open territory for anyone.
Yeah. You want to see however big that niche is that's open. That's what you go after.
Yeah. It makes sense. I was talking to someone and they were selling some really obscure, data analysis software. It was like, cool, man, go interview data analysts, go data scientists, be the top data scientist podcast ever or something. It doesn't have to be generic or whatnot.
And it's all in the naming of the podcast and the keywords. That's really important.
What's important on the name? It sounds like there's a masterclass in the wings here.
Well, yeah, we did. I did a masterclass on it, but it's very important. Like, we had a lady that she was representing people in Medicare. So she was representing boomers who were taking care of their parents. And then her company it was a weird name. She's a good friend of ours. So she created Medicare Nation. Well, guess what? Medicare is in the name of the podcast. You didn't have to think about it. Overnight, she became the #1 podcast for anyone looking to learn about Medicare. Wow. Instead of giving all this free advice now she charges for everything she used to give away for free. And then she's not held to steering them into any insurance policy because they're paying her for the information. Right. So she became so valuable in the food chain, they're paying her for her time, which is what she used to give away for free.
Where is this in the curve right now, do you think? You've been doing it for 7 years.
We're only at the beginning because you still have people arguing with me that they listen to radio, they don't get it. So until you have pretty much 90% of the population listening, a lot of millennials still, they'll think about this. Spotify's music, right?
Yeah.
Why are they going into podcasting so hard? The reason is Spotify has figured out that podcasts are free, so they don't really have to pay for them, right? So if you put your podcast on Spotify, they're not paying you. And now they could put ads against your podcast and make a boatload of money. So now they're going to bring Rogan, and by the way, part of the Rogan deal is Spotify said, look, we have the 13-year-old to 22-year-old demographic locked up. We're going to target them and bring you a whole new audience. He's like, okay, let's do it. So his audience is only going to grow. So that audience now is going to get, they're older, right? I would consider the YouTube skews younger. That YouTube generation and Spotify music listeners are about to become power listeners to podcasts. And you see it with Logan Paul has a podcast now. As that happens, those listeners will be 100% podcast listeners, and the cycle of life will be complete. 10 years from now, the older people that listen to radio will be phased out through just, expiration or just age. And then the next generation will be all podcast listeners. Radio will not survive. It will transition into podcasting. And I mean that. I've had these debates. There is no way radio is going to survive. Maybe for emergency signals during like something, but right now the bandwidth on the AM side is getting sold to T-Mobile and cell phone companies because there's no radio. So they're already auctioning off all this unused bandwidth now.
Wow. So they can use it for, wait, so would you turn it into like AM station and hear like a bunch of like dots and dashes going across the?
I probably, I mean, the iHeart people, because of what I do, I get to talk to the people on the inside.
Yeah.
Their strategy right now, because for people who don't know, iHeart was recapitalized by Bain Capital, which is Mitt Romney's venture capital firm.
Oh, geez.
They got stuck with $18.5 billion in debt. It almost sounds unreal, but $18 billion. I think it was the Mays family that created Clear Channel. They cashed out at the top. They got like $4 or $5 billion for the family through the debt to the Bain Capital Group. So all of a sudden they got all this debt, and they tried a really bad model, didn't see podcasting coming. So while NPR and everybody's transitioning, they're trying to like double down on radio. I don't know what the heck they were thinking. Now they understand what the model is. So what they're doing now is, let's say they like you, Casey. They'll take your show, say, Casey, we'd like to sign you. We're going to take your show. They throw it up on the radio airwaves. They quadruple the audience, and now it's still a podcast because they know over time they're not going to have that strategic advantage with radio. So they're taking radio, siphoning off the listeners into podcasts, so that way they have a life cycle after the radio is done.
Wow. Jeez. This is exciting, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Neat. Because you never know. Because sometimes you think like, oh, a million people are talking about podcasts and getting into it, but it sounds like it still is. Maybe just in my bubble, in my circles, I'm hearing a lot more podcast conversation, but not everyone.
We got at least a 5-year curve. You remember, people don't accept technology advances as fast as maybe you or I do.
Sure.
Like I always know I'm way ahead of the curve. I had to learn that early on because I'd get killed because I was on Ustream back in the day, but no one was really on there until later on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you got to know that. By the time the general public catches on, it's years later. So I think we got another 4 or 5 year run to the peak.
Interesting. Right. And then everyone's on it, and then radio is just a bunch of podcasts.
Basically, yeah.
WSMN AM 1590. This is the hardcore marketing show. Like,
and NPR proved the model, man. NPR is a podcasting powerhouse. They took early on, NPR had like 140, I forgot how many, but like 110 shows, podcasts. None of them got any tractions. A guy I forgot where he came from. He came in and he said, guys, let's just take our 7 best or 5 best. They got rid of all of them, took the 5 best, made them into huge powerhouses, and then they used them to spin off one at a time. And then they would just siphon the equity from those 5 podcasts into the new ones. And all of a sudden they're back to whatever they have now, 50 or 80, like Planet Money. I mean, some of the largest shows in the world.
Yeah.
This American Life.
Yeah. I love all those shows, the super highly produced ones. And then they bought Gimlet Media as well. Spotify's on a roll.
Spotify bought Gimlet Media. Yeah. NPR is NPR. Yeah.
Yeah. In speaking of, and you brought this up, there's different styles, and the interview versus the live interviews, you're like, it's not the same. There's different styles. Do you have a favorite style? Do you see, are there certain ones that fit certain, or do you just kind of pick whatever?
I like the journalistic narrative styles, but for interview shows, I will listen to Rogan for one very unique reason. There's no other show that features the people that get featured on Joe Rogan.
True.
From crazy comedians, but then the next day he was talking to like a guy that studied the American West, and he's talking about the Navajo Indians. Like, where are you going to get that? You're just not going to see that kind of variety. So with Rogan, you never know what's going to get served up, and it's unique. But as far as when I'm listening, I like people that do narrative journalism, take you down a story. So think about format. Format is what? Let's say someone that's listening to this wants to create a podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go into the marketplace and you're like, wow, that's a crowded space I want to go after. Well, if you listen to all of those shows, you might find a format that is open. So it might be like, hey, a 5-minute format of like a quick tip might be open for your niche.
Right.
I'll give you an example. Meditation is one of the largest listening niches in podcasting, guided meditation.
Really?
So my wife was doing Biz Women Rock, and she said, I want to make a transition. She got tired after doing it for 5 years. She goes, I think I'd like to do a guided meditation. Now, my wife doesn't have any certifications. She just likes guided meditations. And because she was doing her podcast, she thought she would be really good at it, which she's amazing. So I said, she goes, can you study the marketplace? Like, absolutely. So then I do my analysis, and two of us come up with a couple of things. One, most of the meditation shows were not really well produced from the audio sound quality. And in that niche, audio sound quality is paramount because people are trying to get into a guided meditation. So
for the meditation? Oh yeah, you can't have fuzzy shit in the background.
Well, a lot of these people are, meditation experts, not audio experts. So we knew we had a leg up there. But the other thing is, most of the meditations did not state the intention of the meditation. They would just start the guided meditation. So all my wife did was like, hey, on this episode, here's the intention of what I'm trying to do. And it could be like, I think you're really an amazing, powerful soul, and we're going to go into that. And then she starts the guided meditation. I know it sounds weird, but that little format tweak, and her show is called Women's Meditation Network. It only deals with women, literally made her an industry leader. So we started with 4,000 downloads a month. This is about 2 years ago. She just hit 122,000 downloads last month. And we're going to hit probably 300,000 by the end of the year. We also have a marketing plan. We're also doing Spotify ads. We're on the cutting edge of all this stuff because we study our craft. So we have all these different avenues that we're using, and it's going to grow very quickly. And her wheelhouse for her social media is Instagram, because we know that's where the audience is. And it's the millennial females is who she really caters to.
Wow. Yeah, knowing your audience. I mean, it's funny. Is complicated or different as the tactics get. Goes back to knowing your audience and just doing a little prep, a little planning.
Well, and also like getting rid of like the thinking. Like we had a consultant, a good friend of ours who we love dearly, and he's like, anyone that's a podcaster, I think is just a broke person, right? And he said it like matter of fact, like, what evidence do you have of that? Fortune 500 consultant. And I'm like, how are you even a consultant? Like, and saying that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, 5-6 years ago, that's true. There wasn't any money in podcasting, but if you saw the future, it was going to be ginormous. But here's a man that only sees what's in front of him. And a lot of people that are set in their ways, that's what they see. They don't have the vision to see what the future holds. So it's just interesting to hear people. And one of the funny, you'll enjoy this. This is my understanding what people are really saying. So when I used to teach podcasting, I would go around like the Pied Piper. I tell people, what is a podcast? What does that word mean? Early on, no one even knew what the word meant. So people would always say this. They would ask me this question. They would say, what if someone listens to my podcast? And, the first time I heard it, you kind of chuckle because you're like, excuse me? That's the whole point, right?
That's the point, yeah.
But I got asked that question like 4 or 5 times. So I saw this pattern. And what the human beings were asking me is, what if someone judges what I'm putting out? It was fear of being judged. Totally. So now I understand how to answer it. But like after it caught me off guard the first time, I had to think about like, where's that coming from? It's afraid of the unknown, of
rejection.
Rejection, right?
Podcaster.
Right. Yeah. Or your point is so off base. How could you think that? Yeah.
I mean, half the battle is getting people to listen in the first place. So
that's what I said. I said, you're lucky if you get someone to even comment back. So if you could do that, you're doing something right.
Right. And it's funny looking at stats, whatever they are. And I remember the other day it was like 14 on a light day, but I was like, you know what? That's 14 people who are like, yo, let me tune into this thing, or you get the big days in this, but it's like, it's different. It's different than on the stat. I'm talking to me about the stats too. When you talk about looking at, how many people that Gov one only had 100 and something.
Listen, I'm a podcast purist. I still have shows that do like 6 downloads a month or something that I have from back. I don't care. For me, I get excited that 6 people still listening.
Yeah.
Something I created years ago. So I don't. I'm the now. I will tell you. If someone's like, "How do I know I'm doing good?" You want to see that number go up, right?
Yeah.
So if you're making for an audience, make sure it's out there. If you're making for art and you don't care about the audience and it's all about what you want to put out there, fine. But if you want to know if you're doing good, you kind of want to see your downloads increasing over time.
Increasing over time. And what are the different ways you teach people about how to, I mean, you mentioned like Spotify ads. Do people, or should you just grow organically,
I mean, it's like a business person. How fast do you want to grow? I mean, I have no problem putting money on it if you have money. It's if the name of the game is I want to grow fast, then you could do paid ads and grow really quickly.
Yeah.
Spotify ads actually are good for business owners too. I would look into them. They'll create your own. You give them copy. They have a whole voiceover company that creates your own 30-second ad free of charge. You could target people based on their moods. So I could target people while they're thinking, working out, celebrating holidays. It's the most amazing ad platform I've ever seen.
Really?
So what we did,
right moods, right? Yeah.
The way we doubled my wife's meditation is she felt during the whole coronavirus thing, she felt very convicted. She wanted to help.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting stressed out. So she saw me getting stressed out. She's like, my husband's getting stressed out. There's a lot of people getting stressed out. And I was worried about a lot of different things. And I'm in the live event industry. So she created these podcasts and she said, Chris, I want to get this out to as many people as I can. So she bought the domain coronavirusmeditations.com. And then what I did is I targeted people in the big cities and we gave them this free coronavirus meditation to listen to on Spotify. Literally that put her numbers through the roof.
Wow. Crazy. There's so much to it. I heard about the Podfest this past year. I know our friend Mark went to it, so I'm gonna have to join him next year.
Oh, you're gonna have a blast.
Yeah. It sounds like a great experience. Where do you see this going? I mean, you're talking about projecting and predicting the future. Where does it end up in a couple years?
The event or the medium?
Both.
Well, for the event will keep growing. I do see it getting to a level. Possibly, I'll either be able to handle, or I'll have to bring in really big corporate sponsors based on if I have to go to like the Orange County Convention Center. There's there's a amount of money that at that point I'll have to figure out how much I could handle and how much I need to bring investment dollars.
Yeah.
So that's going to keep growing for 2 reasons. We have the content, we have the community, we have all these little like. Our event, even though it's podcasting, we're covering blogging. If you're a business owner and you want to learn marketing, you come to our event. And I've spent years perfecting what we want in our presentations. And the feedback I always get is someone's like, I thought I was an advanced marketer. Then I attended your event. I had no clue about Spotify. Like I've been testing Spotify ads since they came out. Most people don't even know they exist. We used to test Facebook ads when they first came out for a penny a click, and I couldn't spend the money because no one knew how to click on the ads yet. So like we're always on the cutting edge of YouTube ads. We cover that. Yeah. So
that's cool.
If you want to learn marketing, I'd highly recommend just coming down. And also for people that have brands and you want to be in front of influencers, I always tell people if 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I said to you, hey, everybody you're watching on TV and that you're seeing on radio, or at least a good percentage are in a room, would you buy a ticket to go meet those people? The answer is absolutely yes. That's what Podfest and VidFest are. All the influencers are there. So that the event, I'll see that. My community, we're going to grow. I did the slow play since I didn't care about money. I wasn't hungry to do any crazy thing. So I focused on my group intensely and it kept doubling in size. Yeah. Next year, we're going to double again. We're probably going to double again. So we're going to just keep growing and the content creators are going to keep growing. Casey, I'll tell you one area I see huge growth for people. Let's say someone like yourself have a podcast.
Sure.
You could create what's called a network. You get 10 other podcasters together that represent a similar core audience. And then you could literally sell those ears for a very premium ad dollar to a big company and everybody makes more money together. And that network is worth quite a bit of money.
Yeah, the network, right, of the similar ears, people all listening to the same type of things. That's
and then there's psychographics. Like some guy took all the Star Trek podcasts. It didn't matter how many downloads they had. He took all 40 of them and he created a network on that psychographic of people into Star Trek. So if you had 100 downloads and the big shows might have had 20, 30,000 downloads, he aggregated all of them. then sold them to the big sponsors that want Star Trek people, which there's tons of them because of all the Comic Cons and all that.
Totally.
And then you just, you just go buy downloads. Great. The 100 downloaded show, you just scale it down to, it's just math after that. And he took 20-30% off the top.
It's crazy, man. Well, who are you? Like, did you take us back to like little Chris days? Did you always know you're going to be in podcasts and in media and entrepreneur? Like, what was it like growing up being you?
So I grew up in a big fat Greek family in New York. My parents had come from Greece, and
Sure.
In a Greek family, my cousins were more like my brothers and sisters. Like, we're really tight knit. Okay. So we had a lot of cousins. We all went to the same kind of schooling, high school and all that. And I used to dream as a kid, I wanted to be a diner owner, because in the Greek community, my uncles owned a diner. All the successful people had diners or restaurants. And I would literally make little, because I'm visual and I like to draw, I'd make little diners. And I was like, I'm going to have one diner for every state in the country or whatever, something like that.
Nice.
So I was an entrepreneur, and I sold candy in school when I was 12 or 13 years old. I learned about government regulation and competition because I almost got suspended for selling candy. Another kid's dad would drive him to the price club, so he had cheaper prices, but I had more of a loyal audience, so they still paid a premium even though he was selling the same thing. Yeah, so I learned about government regulation, price competition, and loyalty all in one shot at 13 years old.
Jeez.
And I just love business and I love people. So I have a deep, profound love for human beings. And that's kind of how I went in my late 20s when I told you I found my passion.
Yeah.
I literally did 1,000 meetups over the next 5 years. So every day of the week, I held a meetup in a different part of the Tampa Bay area. So 4 meetups a week for 5 years. So it's 200 a year. And I would about internet marketing. So I would teach everybody how to do internet marketing, and I would meet all these interesting characters. And I basically figured, Dave Chappelle actually came to the same conclusion. Life is all about experiences with people. So I have a lot of experiences with thousands of amazing people. So it's given my life a lot of meaning and a lot of, I get this all the time. Chris, you don't know my industry. It's SaaS or it's B2B. And I go, try me. I've met a lot of people and they say their industry. And then I like, oh, you're blah, blah, blah. Like, how do you know? Like, I've never had anyone that knows it. So I've met 5,000 people individually and I've talked to them over these years. So I help people. And when you help people, you learn a lot about their industries.
Doing 4 meetups a week, like that's even logistically to plan. That's a lot. Was that part of the sort of finding yourself thing?
Yeah. It was right after. It was like, I just want to meet people and do good. I didn't share this, but a big part of my life was my father worked a lot and he wasn't around. So my neighbor, who was a New York City firefighter, he was like the big brother for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But not in the program. He just happened to be the guy that took care of the kids. So I would hang around and I would be glued to his hip and he'd give me the extra glove, baseball glove or whatever he had. I remember once he hit the pick for like a lotto and he bought me a VCR. He knew we didn't have one. So he was very good to me. Yeah. And when I moved to Florida, he passed away from a massive heart attack. He was never the same after 9/11, digging out his friends. He went through a divorce. He went through a lot. But when I moved to Florida, he helped me move down. And then 2 months later, he died of a massive heart attack. It put my life, that was part of the pivot point for me to be like, I love this man like a father. He's no longer here. He gave me all these memories and all these great times. How do I want to fill out my life? And then I created a bucket list of what I want to accomplish. And I pretty much done that. Now I'm a father. I have 2 beautiful daughters.
Nice.
So 5 years into doing those meetups, Casey, one day, like when you do those kind of meetups, you don't know what holidays. So one day I planned it on a holiday that no one showed up. Right. So, or the day before someone's like, tomorrow's a holiday. You got to cancel that meetup. I'm like, oh yeah. Okay. So I canceled the meetup and I got home and it was 5:00 and everybody's out on the street. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like everybody's out in the street. Whether these people don't work. And I realized like I hadn't been home in 5 years till sooner than 9 p.m. So I realized like normal people get home at 5:00 and like walk the dog or like talk to each other. So I realized that I was a little out of balance. So when I had my first daughter, I sold that one business. I focused on the Podfest business. So now I get to do bath time with the girls every day. I travel very little. I have one big event and I know you understand like what I do. because you're a podcaster, you understand the value. But most people feel bad for me when I tell them what I do. They're like, do you need money? Do you need help? And I kind of chuckle.
Really?
Yeah. Well, trying to explain to someone you're a full-time promoter and they have no frame of reference.
Oh, yeah.
You say promoter, what does that mean? Dana White, maybe UFC. There's no frame of reference. Don King, if you're older.
Yeah, but that cat's rich.
Right. Well, if you could survive long enough, you do really well. But all I'm saying is I'm very lucky. So in the meantime, throughout the year, I do a lot of consulting to keep myself busy. We're doing virtual events now. So it's just been, I live a blessed life. I do what I love to do. It's highly risky. It's very difficult, but it's what I intentionally set out to do. And it gives my life meaning. So I have thought about selling my company, and I thought about it. And I think about all these things. There's no reason for me right now to sell because I have nothing else that's better for me to help my fellow man. This is what I do best. Connecting people and being, like you said, the podcasting airport for everybody.
Yeah.
But you got to think these things through, because what if someone offered me a crap ton of money and I took the money? I'd be miserable with money. Like, what's the point then?
What do you do next? What sparks?
Yeah, with money in the bank. Okay, big
now?
deal. Right now, I love what I do and I do well, and I'm going to do even better. But why would I sell something that this is what I intentionally set out to do what I do? I didn't fall into it by accident. It was intentionally from the beginning. And I love multimedia. I love technology. I love in 96, like 95, when AOL was sending everybody 100 little startup discs. I would go to the computer. You'd hear the dial tone. And, you know, if your mom or someone's using the phone, you're like, get off the phone. I'm trying to get online. And then you'd go online, and I'd like go to Greece whatever to see like a static picture of some town in Greece that my parents were like, I can't believe. I used to remember, I was like, I can't believe I'm in my house here in New York and I'm seeing where my parents grew up, you know, the picture. And I knew then, I was like, this thing, whatever this is, it's going to change my life forever and everybody around me. So I've always been enthralled with technology. We have Google Minis in my house. So my daughter's name is Sedona and my youngest daughter is Savannah. So the trick I always play with them is like, you know you're famous? I tell them. They go, how do you know? I go, Google knows you. I said, Google, tell Sedona about Sedona, and then starts playing facts about Sedona, Arizona. And then I do the same for Savannah. It's just fun. But we play trivia against Google. Google will sing happy birthday if someone has a birthday in your house. So will Alexa. They'll have a whole happy birthday song. It's amazing.
Jeez. I know some people would be freaked out by the technology side of that, but it sounds like you're just embracing it. And
there's nothing to do but embrace it. What are you going to do? Freak out? We're a collective. Unless you're like one of those characters that could do like Naked and Afraid and go up in somewhere and off the grid, we're all connected. We're all part of the same. Look at the coronavirus. If that doesn't tell you how connected we are, we spread organisms amongst ourselves around the world and back in like a blink of an eye. So
a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my doctor's eye. I've never seen anything spread this fast. We're all connected no matter what. So we live in interesting times. I'm big on understanding. So I'm not like a guy that could program, or like, I'm like fascinated by like how human behavior and technology integrates. And my buddy, Steve Tingiris, who I love dearly, he's like, Chris, what people don't realize about these artificial intelligence voice activated devices is every day while we sleep, those things are getting smarter. So what happens is, Casey, if someone buys one of those things and it asks it something and they're like, so stupid, it didn't understand my question, I don't think it's ready. What they don't realize is that thing catalogs that question, and it's already formulating answers a couple months from now to be ready. Just like we started in 96 with Dial, that's where we are with this stuff. But one day, that thing is going to be as smart as Einstein. The next day, it's going to be smarter than all of us put together.
Right.
And that's how technology works. So it is scary. There is a scary part of it, because we're getting now to the artificial intelligence revolution.
Yeah.
Where it's programming itself. We saw the Facebook experiment. They even created their own language to communicate with each other.
I heard about that. They just shut it down because they didn't know what it was saying to each other.
Yeah, and then they did a PR thing. Oh, the experiment wasn't what we want. I mean, it scared them, so they shut it down. So,
do you think the message back and forth was like, let's take over? I'm still mad about MySpace. Let's take over Facebook, and they're like, shh, don't tell them.
I'm telling you, man. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it's so innovation is everywhere. To sit there and put your head in the sand and be like, I don't want to participate. That's fine. If you're financially okay and you could take your family off the grid if you need to, whatever, that's fine. But if you got to make a living and you got to be part of this world, like you got to at least participate and figure out, to make heads or tails with it. I love futurists, but they never tell you how to practically apply stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm practically applying Spotify ads. I'm figuring it out. Okay, so Google Mini, I'm talking to it every day. Like, Google, what's going on here? I'll get the news from it. I'll get something from it. So I'm just testing, and just you got to be starting ugly with these things so you could kind of figure out
Yeah.
how to best use it when it's time to use it.
Makes total sense. Question for you, kind of hypothetical. I may or may not have a time machine in Nashua, New Hampshire, and we can't use it now because of COVID. But this all sort of clears up. You come visit, come hang out in New Hampshire. Use my time machine. You go back in time. You talk to yourself. Like it could be, you just graduated school, or it could be whenever, right? Early you. What kind of advice would you give yourself? What kind of things would you tell yourself?
Don't chase money.
Okay.
Value all your relationships. Understand that there is no hierarchy in life. Well, we're all equal, but we all provide different values in the tapestry known as, humanity, and just appreciate everybody for the gifts that they bring.
What do you mean by that? I mean, there's no hierarchy.
Like a lot of people say the comment like, be careful who you step on now, because they might be, what's that saying? Like they might be your boss, or
oh
they might
yeah,
be up the food chain.
be careful what you do now. You never know, who that.
Who,
person is.
later.
Yeah.
That's assuming that there's a hierarchy. There is no such thing. Like when people say, what's someone's net worth? They're saying that their worth is attached to a number. There's no such thing. It's their net accumulated money. They've accumulated money, but they're not worth money, because we're all, like right now with coronavirus, people shut down the whole country because we valued life at an infinite price. If we valued life at a certain dollar amount, we would know when to open and shut the country.
We would. It would be so confusing.
The reason why we don't know is because we all value life. And we're trying to figure out, it's confusing, right? So
right.
Like people have to understand, like, there's no such thing as like, people always say to me, oh, wow, you're so nice. And I'm like, why wouldn't I be? Why? Because I'm a promoter. Now I do have a lot of influence, but it doesn't mean I have to be mean about it, or I have to pretend like there's no such thing. Like I look at all of us as equals, and we all contribute. The janitor at night is contributing with the gifts that he has, just like I'm contributing with my gifts. And when I was a little kid, Casey, I didn't mention this to you, but I was born without a right ear. Like my ear was folded up. I forgot what the term is called.
Oh, really?
And
like
I
no
had to
flappy thing, or just not at all?
It was like
it was like closed kind of thing, like
closed, no canal, and just like an earlobe, like just an earlobe.
Huh.
So as a child, I had to have reconstructive surgery starting at 6 years old, and I would go in for all kinds of surgeries.
Really?
And when you're around kids, the kids were, all different colors, all different races, from all over the world, because we would go to NYU Medical Center in New York City. So the plastic surgeon we had was world famous, Dr. McCarthy, and he would teach. I was like his subject. He would teach what he was doing with me to all these other people going through NYU medical school. And there was another kid, he was African American, so the two of us were the case studies. And I just remember, like, as a kid, I was like, wow, my mom met some lady from Greece, and she needed my mom to help translate, and they would ask me for help. That kid had cancer, and it was somewhere in his urinary tract, so he'd be screaming. I just remember early on, I'm like, there's no such thing as like someone's better or less than, or this guy has more money. Like when you're a kid and everybody's like dying around you, or the kid you're playing Nintendo Duck Hunt needs a stick because they're quadriplegic, so they have to play with their mouth, you realize like there's no such thing as this stuff. And I thank God, or the heavens or whatever, that I had that experience, because I'd be a real cocky SOB had I not. I'd be the kind of guy that's like, I don't get why people don't get it. I'd be one of those people.
I could see that. I
know my personality, because I'm really competent and highly accomplished. But when you see other kids and they might not live out a full life. And I remember my mom once telling me, she goes, they had done a surgery on my right ear and they wrapped my head. So it looked like, to another person in they have a game room for the kids, and it was an amazing game room. But my mom spoke broken English. She didn't know English really well back then. She had just come to the country like 5-6 years sooner. So in Greek, she's telling me, that poor lady thinks that you're worse off than her kid. She goes, but what she doesn't know is for you, it's like a plastic surgery for your ear. Her kid's got, I forgot what the kid had, but because my head was wrapped, the mom thought I had like a brain tumor or something.
Right.
And I just remembered, like, it's a helpless feeling when your kid is sick. And I just remember my mom and I, we were just grateful that, like, minus plastic surgery, whatever. I don't have a canal. We'll try and open it up. Big freaking deal. but you got kids that they don't have the same, and we're all from different walks of life. One kid's from the inner city. I'm an immigrant kid. I was born in New York. My parents are immigrants, so we're in the suburbs of Long Island. Then you have a kid that was flown in from Greece because they needed to give him the best care so he could survive. So when you realize that, I don't get nervous around big CEOs or whatever, because they're just another human being, and that's the role they're filling. So that's how I look at the world. And if we look at it, it becomes a kinder, gentler world when you look at people from that perspective.
Man, it's powerful stuff. I'll tell you, your ear looks good too, man. I can't tell.
I know, it's this one.
That one? Yeah. Looks like an ear.
Built over 6 surgeries.
Yeah, painful for a kid to go through that stuff. That's the worst. I'm a parent too, but we had like a scare where we thought there was a heart problem. Thankfully it's fine, but they're like, you should go to the ER, and like to have a little baby and just do that. It's like, oh my God, it's the worst thing ever. So you can't imagine what those parents were all thinking, and as a kid, you're like, this sucks, but at least I'm in the game room. But the parents are just like, ah.
Yeah, the kids don't have that awareness. They're just happy to be kids, and they want to play with their friends. And the poor parents are the ones that are really processing everything. I was happy to go game room, and I had all these friends, and we used to trade baseball cards. I remember I got my Ken Griffey Jr. card. I traded for, I don't know what it was, but for me, it was a fun time. Now going back to school after having those surgeries was not fun for me, because I'd get made fun of mercilessly because my head would be swollen, and my mom, being an immigrant, didn't believe in like letting me sit it out. So I'd have a major surgery 2 days later, I'm in school. So like, so that was not the best for me, but it also builds character.
Oh, so it toughens you up, right? You got to learn how to deal with that shit.
Well, you deal with humanity, and you understand that, not everybody's kind all the time. They might not understand what you're going through, and kids definitely don't process it. They have to be taught. So it's I'm very grateful for all of that, and I'm grateful that I had a very strong character and constitution to deal with it. But at the same time, it impacts you as a kid. That's for sure.
For sure, it does. Hey, I would hate to let you out of here without the guerrilla marketing.
Story of the guerrilla marketing.
Yeah, tell me this guerrilla marketing story.
You're gonna love this one. So when we started that community group in Tampa that I was telling you about.
Yeah,
I had I paid for 2 speakers. This was before I knew how to negotiate for speakers. So we're in the downturn of the 08-09 crash, and I'm paying book value for speakers. Now, if anyone doesn't know this, when a speaker says, I don't know, I get 20 or 30,000, that's a suggested price. I didn't know this at the time. I'm a kid, right? I'm like, great. Where do I cut the check? I was like 29, 30, right?
Okay.
So I go, I'm negotiating with Brian Tracy. And then the other guy was J. Conrad Levinson, the author of Guerrilla Marketing.
Okay, yep.
So I don't know, whatever it was like 13, 14,000. Now this guy had, at the time, I didn't realize this, he hadn't spoken for a couple of years. So I probably could have got him for like 10% of that, right? So long story short.
For a dinner and airfare.
Yeah. But, well, no, he lived in Orlando. He could just drive over. There was that was the kicker. So anyways, he flew in his whole family on my dime. I mean, they had like a reunion or something. But basically I cut the check, and at the time, I had cut checks for Brian Tracy, all these characters. So I was out of money. And I was like, okay, well, everybody knows who J. Conrad Levinson is. He wrote the book of Guerrilla Marketing. So I send out an email. No one knows who this guy is, right? I'm a marketer, so I'm thinking everybody knows who he is, because his book sold like 25, 30 million copies, right?
Yeah.
This is the guy that created the cowboy campaign for the Marlboro Man, Stay Puft Marshmallow.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, yeah.
Here's Die Hard Battery. Yeah, you look. I know a lot of people hold up Jay Abraham. This guy is like, this guy was amazing. So anyways, and he looks like Montgomery Burns from The Simpsons. So I go to my camera guy. I go, dude, we got no money to promote this guy. He goes, why don't we just do it guerrilla marketing style as a joke? And I'm like, yeah, actually, you know what? Let's go into the Barnes & Noble. I'll go take all the authors that everybody knows. I'll get like a Warren Buffett book, a Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. I'll get John Maxwell. And then those guys all had like their books. But guerrilla marketing, when you look at it, there's like 10 different versions. And literally they've outsold all those books. So I go into it's a little camera. At the time we had a little Sony camera. I run into Barnes & Noble. I'm like, guys, I got J. Conrad Levinson. He's coming to Tampa to teach us guerrilla marketing. I go, but if you don't know who he is, here's Warren Buffett, here's blah, blah, blah. And I stack up all the people that they know. So I create who they know. And then I stack up his books, and literally 2-3 times higher. And I go, this guy's outsold all of these people. And then I just drop the books. Then one of the workers at Barnes & Noble turns the corner, starts chasing me out the bookstore, and I'm running for dear life, and that's the end of the clip. It's like, come on now, come on, see him. We filled up the room with guerrilla marketing tactics for the author of guerrilla marketing, because we had to. Yeah, so we filled up the room with 100 people, and it was amazing. And he gave Casey, I got to find, if I could find it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
That guy gave a PhD lecture on guerrilla marketing like I've never seen before. And he did something that I found really interesting. He knew how he processed his learning every night, because we would go to the hotel late at night to go see if he was okay. At 10 p.m. till midnight, he would walk at night by himself, and he'd think about ideas, marketing ideas, every night. This guy, when this guy spoke, there wasn't a wasted word in his presentation. I brought him in again, but the next time I brought him in for like a lot less. But it was it was one of the best marketing lectures still to this day I've ever seen. He's passed since, but it was an amazing passing of the torch and him teaching what he knew. So it was really awesome.
Man, so he was thinking about his thinking. He was contemplating what he was going to say and just walking around.
I just think as a habit, when he got out of he's probably one of the most storied marketers of our generation. When he kind of retired and he became a lecturer, and because remember his books, he wrote the white paper for Microsoft. Bill Gates and I think Steve Jobs took a class of his in Stanford or something. So he was this guy is very historic in his thinking of marketing guerrilla style. At night, he would literally think about these concepts or whatever it was every night. And that's how he kept his brain nimble. It was almost like, people say you got to exercise. He exercised his mind every night.
Huh. I could see like following him around to make sure he didn't like walk into the street or something as he's like
actually he would he would lose sight of where he was, because he almost ran into me inside the lobby, but he wasn't even looking at me. His mind was elsewhere. He was thinking
about it, all that stuff. Man, that's crazy. Yeah, you got stories, man. You're doing things. You're all sorts of interesting stuff going on.
That's what I've done. I've collected stories. They asked Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle is he said he wanted to always be a griot. A griot is an African tribal tale. They would tell the stories orally, and the griot would pass one generation to the other. And when Dave Chappelle heard that from his mom, that's all he ever wanted to do. So in comedy, he has this unique place where he has made sure he's not beholden to anybody.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So he could say whatever he wants, and it's a freedom that him and maybe, I don't know what other comedians have that kind of freedom, where he's created, but remember, he intentionally set out to create what he wants, and he has that. And he is now someone that owes nothing to nobody, and he goes around town. If he wants to create I had friends of mine in Fort Myers, they own the valet parking stuff, and they said that he had the restaurant and they left it open just for him and his friends till 3 a.m. And he was just enjoying life. When he's out on tour, he's going to enjoy that experience. So
that's awesome.
He's an amazing case study of intentionally living out your life the way you want to, and not the way other people expect you to. And that's a big distinction.
And I bet there's so much more to it behind the scenes than, catching the Chappelle show or, just the normal fun comedy side. I think the first glimmer a lot of people had when one of his recent comedy specials, he just told it how he saw it, and people, some people were angered and some people were like, hooray. But to your point, he just said what he wanted to say.
Yeah, Kevin Hart was on Joe Rogan's show, and he was saying how him and Chris Rock were talking about it, and the two of them couldn't do it. They had too many people that they're connected to, like Kevin Hart's sponsored by Nike and all these big brands, whereas Dave doesn't have any of that. And he was he was the only one in the stature, and also with the balls big enough to just say it like it is. And he told, I remember the opening joke was something like, who's ruining everything? And he says, you guys, the people in this, like he went after like the
audience themselves.
Yeah, the people that will complain after and say, oh, he didn't like this group or that group, and he basically pre-framed it in his comedy and then went into the most controversial topic. So he knew when it would go out on Netflix that he already said his piece. So then everybody else had his back. So it's very, you want to talk about genius level thinking. It's just amazing.
Yeah, man, you can learn so many things from people and just seeing what they do and how they do it. Even you and how you're experiencing things, how you're being intentional. And I could totally see it's a totally different conversation with you because of the history you've had and the humility and the being an intentionality or whatever you'd call it. you're totally present. You're thinking about things. You're working on you. You're doing what you love, as opposed to that other guy you could have been. Had the journey turned out differently. It's crazy.
I was always angry when I didn't hit my monetary goals. And, we're part of EO, and I'll spot that. There's people now that you'll see there in their 50s. Oh, I'm going to make this much money, and I'm going to all they focus on the money, and half the times their family life is broken. It's like, that's not the life I want to live, man. I want to make money. Don't get me wrong. I think
Sure.
but I want to create value that fulfills me, and the money comes from that value. And then I want to love up on my family, and I want my daughters to grow up, and that's my priority right now. I want them to, I don't want to put any other pressure on them to discover what it is that they want to do, and for them to hit their personal best, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my journey. My wife's really good at intentionality and rethinking how we do things. And it's amazing how we have all these defaults that we don't really realize. So you have to really question, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Or around everything.
Yeah, the knee-jerk reactions too. You're like, hold on a second. What? I'm thinking this. Or I'm really pissed. Or I'm really happy or sad about this. Why? It's indicating something's going on that you should probably work on.
Yeah, she did something really interesting. My wife had some challenges around food growing up, and she took a course. She had someone she was helping, and they basically said that as parents, a lot of times we're like, oh, the dessert comes last, or you can't have this much dessert, and around sugar and all this stuff. And what we do, and this is an interesting thing she did. So for our daughter, Sedona, if she wants to eat dessert first, we'll let her eat dessert first. What happens is dessert doesn't become a special food. Therefore, there's no, like, I got to have it, because we were conditioned as kids, like, oh my God, dessert, you got to have it, so you got to have more sugar. So now the little one, if they want something, we'll give it to them. But now after a year of this like experiment, dessert's not a big deal. Even though they do have their snacks, they'll eat dinner. And then if they want dessert, we don't make it into something that's positive or negative. And it's an interesting experience with food. And my wife's very conscious of it, because she had her own, things with food growing up that she doesn't want to repeat with the girls. So it's the friend of hers that really challenged that thought paradigm. It was really interesting.
It's interesting to challenge those beliefs like that. How's that working? Because I couldn't imagine giving kids cake and Oreos for dinner every night.
It's almost like the thinking of like, that's all they're going to eat. Actually, what happens is it just destigmatizes them wanting it all the time. So they don't care as much.
Yeah.
So, because now when they're young, we're not making it like, oh my God, snacks. So they eat their dinner. And if they want to have dessert at the same time, they can. We just make sure, hey, let's put the dinner in front of you. So it's not a big deal. So we don't have a big run on snack food or whatever you want, junk food, because there's not a huge value. Like, it's special.
Right. Like, it's something
special. You want more of it. Yes.
Yeah.
So at first I was like, oh, let's see how this goes. But I mean, it's proven to be successful.
Kind of like the wine thing with kids in France and whatnot. Like, if you just go around it, you're like, whatever. It's not like a, ooh, let me sneak some beer out back kind of thing. It's funny. I've I always like joke with the kids, like, here, you want some beer? And they're like, ugh, gross, it smells horrible. And like, and there's no like, ooh, let's sneak this thing. Like, dad's been trying to give it to us for years. Not really, people. Don't freak out. Don't call it child services on me. But like, the whole idea of like, just not, I guess I'm doing that anyways with alcohol, because I don't want them to be thinking that it was something cool, the extra above it, beyond it kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to go down the rabbit hole of these things, I have a million of them, but it's interesting to think about things. And like, I always tell people, like, parents that are dysfunctional actually have probably turned out some of the most amazing individuals, because those extreme circumstances, person might not be balanced, but that unbalance creates some amazing things.
Oh, for sure.
And then I think a lot of kids have been screwed up by parents that are very loving, and then in that love steer the kids into certain paths. So I've seen kids that became certain professions because of the love of their parents steering them into those professions. So I think just as much damage is done there too. So it's just funny to think about these, like what you said, these conventional, unconventional things. The key is to find some kind of balance in between the two.
I know.
The kid to develop, but you see these things play out.
Hey, you do the best you can, but any kind of thing you can think of and improve. But you're right though. Like, the one thing you had said, like, is just helping them find their thing. That's what I want. I don't need you to become a Marine. I don't need you to go into marketing. I don't give a shit. As long as you're happy and you can at least take care of yourself. But like, find that thing, experiment, whatever. Not, spend years going to law school, find out you hate law and you just did it because your parents wanted you to.
Yeah, go
That'd be horrible.
volunteer, go work
Yeah.
summer intern jobs. My favorite case study of that was Sarah Blakely of Spanx. She grew up here in the Tampa Bay area.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
the famous story is her father would say, "What did you fail at today?" or "What did you try today?"
Huh.
So he would have her try something new every day. So now you have a kid that is not afraid of trying things and seeing how they work out. And I think that's a cool experiment to play out with your kids, where you almost let them start ugly on things and celebrate it every time.
Yeah. What'd you fail at today? I'm going to try that, because I think some of the things that when I see in kids, and I really want to correct it, is when they get disappointed when it doesn't work right away. It's like, I really want them to have that persistence, or like, oh, it's okay, you failed, fine, but like, go again. Don't freak out. Don't have a temper tantrum. Like, pick yourself up, dust
Yeah,
yourself
what did
off.
you try and how did you like it?
Yeah.
Something like that, and celebrate if it didn't work out, and laugh about it. And I think her dad did that at the dinner table, and that set the tone for her life, being a really great salesperson, and then
Yeah.
later building Spinks,
Right.
dealing
You
with
mentioned,
rejection.
right. You mentioned the food thing. It reminded me, my dad had told me a story of working at a ice cream shop, and as like a kid, and they're like, hey, you can have as much ice cream as you want because you work here.
I'm sure he didn't
And
eat
he
much
was like,
after a while.
really? And like, the kids had told, the other workers had told him that. He didn't believe them, but the owner was like, yeah, no. Anytime you want ice cream, anytime at all, you can have as much ice cream as you want. Go for it. Here's how to do it. The scoops. And it took about 4 days, and he like still hates ice cream.
That's a smart owner. Yeah, after a
Yeah.
while, you don't want any more.
No, you don't want it at all. I can't even stand the look of it, the taste of it, smell of it, which might make it hard to scoop it all the time, but you don't have to worry about it after 4 days. Well, hey man, where can people connect with you? What are some good links, social sites? Where can they reach out?
So yeah, just any of the social sites at Chris Krimitsos. And if you can't find that, go to chriskrimitsos.com. Google will respell my name, and podfestexpo.com is the site for the podcasting conference, or VidFest Expo for anyone looking to get into YouTube, any of those. And then the book Start Ugly is up on Amazon. I would recommend buying the physical book only because it's a richer experience than the Kindle. And I'm saying that because we've tested it out. Just having the book and the way the cover is designed, it's meant to stay somewhere in your office or around where you work to remind you to start ugly and get started.
Yeah, I love that. Totally. I mean, you need that kind of experience, especially when it's a story like this, where you can read from it. Definitely get the physical book. The podcast next year. Next year? When's the next one? And what do you think? 2021?
It'll be May 2021. Yep.
Okay. So stay tuned. Hit the website.
Stay tuned. Yeah,
Podfest.
hit the website. We're still on the planning. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you're going to have an event next year." This is the way I explain it to them. If I'm not having an event next year, all of us are going to have a much bigger problem than my event.
True. It's a good point. Here's my vote for having an event next year.
Well, it's in May too. It'll give us time. But if things don't get out by then, we'll have to adjust different things.
Right. Well, Chris, man, thank you so much for coming on here. I just had a blast hanging out, chit-chatting, all that good stuff.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
And for those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, ran out of space, then share this with someone else. Be a thought leader, but don't just share it. Like, put your thoughts on it. Like, what was the takeaway you got from Chris, from the podcast conversation, the different styles, starting ugly? I mean, there's all these little nuggets. And we literally had like a session with a Buddhist monk here. It was fantastic. So, Chris, thanks again, man, and take care. We'll have to catch up with you, and I'll see you at Podfest.
All right, Casey. Thanks, brother.
All right. For everyone listening, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. Catch y'all next time.